was winter. Every dark cloud filled the sky. That night snow fell, and deep drifts piled up in surrounding countryside. Next morning, Bertie the bus set out early from Farquhar, but it wasn't long before he came back. "We can't get over the hill," he told Thomas. "There are drifts higher than my roof. We were lucky to be able to turn round. You'll need to go steady at the tunnel, Thomas. I expect the snow's thick there too." Just then a taxi drove into the station yard. An important-looking man got out and was taken to see the station master. Then Percy came and told them that the cutting before the tunnel was almost filled with snow. Thomas and his driver and fireman set off with the snowplow, but the snow was so thick that the snowplow bent and began to damage the rails. "That's torn it," said Thomas's driver. "We'll never get through now." They took the snowplow off, left it beside the line, and went back to the station. The station master came up with the important-looking man. "This gentleman has to see Mr. Kindly," he said. "It's a very important matter, and he must see him today at all costs." The driver scratched his head. "Well, I'm blowed if I know how," he said. "We can't get through a block cutting without a snowplow." "A bulldozer might be handy," suggested the fireman. "What about Terence?" asked Thomas. "Hasn't he got a bulldozer thing that his driver fits in front sometimes?" "Well done, Thomas!" exclaimed the driver. "I'll telephone his owner straight away." By the time Toby had taken some workmen to the cutting, Terence was already at work. He and the men soon had the line clear, and Toby went back to tell Thomas. Mr. Kindly's visitor got into Annie the coach, and Thomas set off. Deep cliffs of snow stood on either side of the line that Terence had cleared, and Thomas puffed triumphantly through and stopped outside the cottage. The guard helped the important-looking man from Annie, and both Mr. Kindly and his visitor came to thank Thomas. The guard went with them to make sure they did not slip on the path up to the cottage, and then Thomas, cold but pleased, left for the junction. The Fat Controller was pleased too. "I've said it before and I'll say it again," he told them. "There can be no doubt that Thomas is a really useful engine." Post early for Christmas. Christmas was coming. All the letters, cards and parcels posted in Farquhar were carried along Thomas's branch line to the sorting office in Tidmouth. The trains became heavier and heavier. One day, about a week before Christmas, the people at the post office in Farquhar asked for a special train that evening. The station master agreed and arranged for Percy to take it. Then during the morning at about lunchtime, the sky clouded over, thick and heavy from the east. It began to snow, not hard at first, but by tea time it had turned into a blizzard. Percy shivered. "Brrr! Just might like to have to go out again," he grumbled. "I'd much rather be in my nice warm shed." "Wouldn't we all?" agreed his driver and fireman. "But orders are orders. You wouldn't want children missing their presents on Christmas Day just because you'd rather be in your shed, would you?" They fixed the snowplow to Percy's front buffer beam, put all the mail in sacks, and packed in big metal trolleys loaded onto the train. Percy set off. Rather to his surprise, the snow wasn't too bad. The tunnel was usually the worst place in snow, but they reached it without any trouble. Percy whistled cheerfully as they passed Mrs. Kindly's cottage, but nobody waved in reply. Crimson curtains were sensibly drawn against the weather, and a warm glow of light shone through them on the snow outside. "We'll be all right now," said the fireman, as they came safely out into the valley. But he was wrong. They passed the station by the river all right, but they found in the open land lower down the valley that the snow had drifted more deeply. Conditions became steadily worse. Before they reached the station by the airfield, they realized that they could go no further. By now the snow was level with Percy's buffers, and a sharp wind was blowing off snow from the sides of the cutting to pile up around him. "Quick," urged Percy's driver, "back to the last station or we shall be stranded." But it was too late. Already the snow was so thick around Percy's wheels that they just spun helplessly and didn't move him an inch. "Go back to the station and tell them what's happened," the driver told the fireman. Thank goodness there aren't any passengers to worry about. No, grumbled the fireman, only me. You didn't say I needed snowshoes, did you? He told the guard where he was going, and a little while later the guard came up to Percy's cab to be near the fire. He rubbed his hands together happily. Heh, made the most of it, remarked the driver with a grin. We can only keep it as long as the coal and water lasts. When the fireman reached the station, the staff there wasted no time in sending for help. But the weather was worse on the coast, and even Donald and Douglas couldn't force their way through. They thought of sending to Farquhar for Thomas, but then realized that by the time he could reach them, the snow would probably be thick enough to strand him too. They held a conference in the station master's office. It's the mail that's the biggest worry, said the station master. We can't just leave it stuck in the snow. They ought to keep part of the airfield clear at all times, suggested Percy's fireman. Harold the helicopter's there. He could take the mail for us. They took hot drinks and food down to Percy's driver and guard, and in several journeys brought the sacks of mail up to the station. Early next morning the skies had cleared enough for Harold to be allowed to take off. He took as many sacks as he could and kept coming back for more until the mail was cleared. It was afternoon before Thomas and Toby reached him from Farquhar, and they pulled Percy and his train back to safety. Thank you for rescuing me, said Percy. Now I know what you felt like, Thomas. Remember that year when you went to collect the Christmas tree for the Fat Controller and you became stranded in the snow blizzard and you had to be rescued? It was all right till my fire went out, but I don't want to do it again. Next year, posting early for Christmas can start just as soon as it likes.